now with bad weather, ice storms, and snow going through the day. So this is me.
Got it. Got it. Well, how's everybody doing this morning?
I'm sick. I'm not feeling good at all. I'm
What?
gonna
Jesus.
suck it up, get through the day.
I didn't think you got sick, man.
I know. Not until I started living with my wife again. So she got sick and then she gave it to me. But I'll
They're
be all
germ
right.
farms.
Yeah, big plan though is to get ready. Is to get ready to interview this Wednesday
Nice.
for a job. So I've been doing some research on it.
Sweet. Is that the one we researched last week? The medical company? Cool. Did you do any research on it this weekend?
Yeah, I got YouTube actually was my friend. There was a good interview with like a leader of them. It was maybe 10 minutes. So I really got the overview of what they do and what they, product service, the whole nine.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was able to watch another video of the actual science of one of the 300 tests they do. So I'm going to do a little more, but I feel like, okay, yeah, I have an idea of what they do.
Cool. How about anybody else? Did anybody else pick a prospect this weekend and do a little research?
I was searching around, and next thing you know, I felt like the lawyer chasing the ambulance as I found, pun intended, MedStar.
Yeah.
Was shut down for a few days, and it really affected their emergency response.
Yeah.
But I couldn't just find like a brand new company or some kind of lead, to get me to that new business or something that maybe hasn't been touched yet versus ambulance.
Yeah. That's a good point, Brandon. I'll speak to that just for a second, because I felt the same feeling a lot, right? You kind of read the news and, hey, here's the top 10 breaches that happened in the last week. And my thought is, if you called all those 10 companies, if they're public, they're going public with the breach. They're probably getting bombarded by salespeople, right? B,
Yeah.
if I'm running incident response, it's like all hands on deck, batten the hatches down, right? We're kind of like forming like a shield wall against the public, right? We are in crisis mode. So to get into that environment, unless you're already trusted by that team, it feels like you're fighting a pretty losing battle. So my thought is, either get in before something bad happens, build trust, and then when something bad happens, you're already trusted and inside the circle, or put it out there kind of through your network effect that you are a trusted resource for incident response. And if you get breached, or if you know someone that gets breached, you can make a referral in, because I don't think you're going to build any trust, like you said, ambulance chasing, publicized breaches, right?
Yeah.
Which is true. I mean, you're right. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily. It's like, hey, the whole world knows we got breached now, so like everybody and their mom's going to be calling us and trying to get, sell us something, and you just like, they're already kind of like immune or numb to that, forming new trusted relationships at that point. It's like, think about it in a platoon environment. Like the beginning of the platoon, everyone's kind of new and you're getting to know each other and you're building trust and relationships, and you go through workup together, and then you deploy and you're in a firefight. It's like, do you want a new member of your platoon to join mid firefight? Like, hey, this guy we never fucking met before. Like, I don't trust this guy. I'm not gonna, trust him with my life. Like, I wouldn't. So put yourself in their shoes. Like, they don't trust you, and they're probably not in a place where they can, open up to trusting new outside people right now. There's a possibility, but I think unless I'm already in, or I'm piggybacking on someone else's trust, yeah, you're chasing ambulances at that point. So what you can do, what I do with that information is I write about it. Say, hey, are you in the hospitality space? Did you know that Marriott Hotels was recently breached? Maybe you read that, but did you know that here's why they got breached, and here's how you could do something about it before you get breached. It's like, use that story, use that publicly available, breach announcement as a way to talk about what you do, right? To talk about, this is what happened to Marriott Hotels, right? If you're in hospitality, put yourself in their shoes. Now, it's an easy kind of empathy equation to say like, oh, I develop hotels for a living. I use Marriott a lot. We're partners. Like that's close to home. For someone that hasn't been breached yet, right? So then you go talk to the people that that haven't been breached yet in that industry, talk about Marriott as a cautionary tale, because that will actually, aside from getting breached yourself or having a regulator tell you have to do it, having a close contact in your industry, a peer, get breached is like the number one thing to get people to take action. So that's a good point. I mean, you definitely don't want to be the ambulance chaser who's just like, it's actually almost cliche how, whenever there's a major breach, all these vendors put out press releases that are like, if they had been using our, Premier Silver XDR service, they would never have been breached. Like, A, it's not true. And B, it's just like, there's a dime a dozen folks out there putting out that kind of content. And so, yeah, we try and be different, and you're not going to build trust telling people that if they had bought from you before the breach, then you would have been their savior. Like that's kind of like saying, I told you so. So
Right. That totally makes sense, Jack. Is there something like a mapping tool on Intellisys that you found that was just free for everybody to use? You know how if you're looking for who has internet service and what are they using right now, kind of a thing,
outside of the Intellisys portal, no, I've not seen that. That's one of the things that they provide partners. But again, you're free to join. I could take any one of you guys, send you an email with an application to be a sub agent, and you just sign up with us, and you could have your own page like that. Doesn't cost us anything, doesn't cost you anything. So if you ever wanted that, get you hooked up with that. But as far as like free or open source stuff outside of Intellisys, I'm unaware of them. I know some of the vendors like AT&T, they have like a lookup tool, but it's a glorified sales tool for them. It's not and it's not everybody, it's just AT&T stuff. So there are yeah, and I haven't really looked that hard just because I have it through Intellisys.
I would love that, Jack, that referral to Intellisys. Just if anything, just so I can start playing with it.
Okay, get that done. Anybody else have any prospecting research they want to talk about? Bueller?
Well, I'm the only guy here. There's like three of us, I think.
There's Colton here, and then Joseph, you're just
Colton.
observing, right?
Yeah, I'm just kind of lingering in the background because you guys
Okay.
actually do talk about some interesting areas, I guess I should say, because that's kind of it's on my radar, I would just say.
Okay, and you're in the tech side of the cohort, right?
Yes, sir.
Cool. Just real fast, what is your ideal goal? Where are you trying to go?
Ideal goal is moving the family to Okinawa, Japan, and then I guess short-term-ish goal, if I can get the right context, I'm trying to open up internet cafe over there, since that's a
Cool.
pretty untapped market over there. So that's what I'm trying to do.
Well, now I want to go research internet options in Okinawa, Japan. So you've sparked my curiosity.
Jack, that's like the most specific goal I've ever heard.
I know, it's amazing.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. When it's amazing, Joseph, is when you have that really tight goal of like, I want to open an internet cafe and take my family to Okinawa, Japan, like it becomes really easy. You might not feel that way, but like you've got a lot of the questions answered already, right? The where and the what, and the who. Now you just got to figure out how to do it. Maybe when exactly, right? What are the details? Who are my customers? And what's real estate cost in Okinawa or whatever. But like you're well on your way, man. So please feel free to chime in with questions. We're here to help. Thomas, hope you feel better, man. And if you have any any questions or whatever, just chime in. You can always chat if you're not up to get on the Zoom here. So if nobody else, Colton, if you don't have anything you want to share, man, we're gonna get into doing some practice interview stuff.
I got one thing, Jack.
What's up, Troy?
Actually,
Yeah, go ahead.
it's probably it's not as much of a it wasn't like I was doing research on a specific company to, you know, prospect in terms of like sales, but I was talking with individual that's at a startup right now, and I guess it's more so like prospecting for like the consulting side of things.
Mhm.
So he works for this startup that pretty much raised too much money too fast, and they don't have a like they don't really have a product market fit quite yet.
Yeah.
So they're kind of hemorrhaging money. So I guess in terms of like a consulting prospect, it would be a good fit for someone to go in there and try to fix their money that's being lit on fire.
So do you have any sense of what they're spending too much money on? Is it payroll? Is it tech stack? Is it marketing? Like, what are they spending on?
Majority of it's on payroll. They hired too many people too quickly, and they it's kind of like everything in tech right now. I think they just got a little ahead of themselves.
Kind of thought it would never go back down. They could just keep kind of hiring. Yep, got it. Okay. Interesting. Anything else you wanted to say about that, or share, or you have any questions about how to approach them, or is that just a?
No, it was just kind of like a general thing. One of the companies that I haven't or I have an interview for is like kind of like a startup type company. So I was just asking them questions about just like general startup-y things, like what to
Yeah.
expect, what kind of interview questions to expect, what's like the environment like, you know, work-life balance, things like that.
Yeah. Got it.
Yeah, I think just in general, you know, there's going to be some headlines and some head fakes and things like that about, you know, people getting laid off at Google and stuff like that. But just in general, you know, people with tech experience, they can't get enough of you. And that doesn't mean you're gonna get an offer from every company, but people are having a real hard time filling seats. So I would be very optimistic, all of you with your backgrounds, that you're going to get a job in tech. And if you get your ideal sales job right off the bat, that's great. And if you don't, you know, like I've said, pick the best company that you like, get in there any way you can, and then slide into sales from there.
I think it's worth mentioning too that sales is like, can both be a specific job, like your job is directly sales, but really anybody, especially in a startup, is in sales no matter what your actual job description is, right? You know, if you're a developer, if you're in marketing, if you're in HR or whatever, and you're out, you know, having coffee and you bump into somebody, you got to be able to intelligently tell them what your company does, what they're looking for, right? You're effectively a salesperson. You might not take it to the entire life cycle and close the deal, but you definitely can hand that off to the sales team as a you know, qualified lead, and be an asset to your organization that way. So always be closing. Sounds cliche. It sounds like a, you know, Glenn Rossism, but you know, your business can be the best thing since sliced bread, but if no one's buying it, no one's selling it, it's like, who cares? So
Yeah, no, that's exactly what he was saying too. He said pretty much was like, I mean, it's a small company. I think they have like 30 people. He was like, everyone, regardless of the role, is wearing a sales hat because, you know, they're constantly pitching themselves to, especially when they're raising money, you know, to just, they had thousands of venture capital meetings that they would just go in. Doesn't matter who it was, as if you were part of the company and your schedule was free, you were, you know, sitting alongside someone that knew the information a little better than you. So exactly like what you just said, Jack. Everyone's selling all the time.
nice. Yeah, and I think you guys might have doubts about your ability to get into an environment like that and affect change or offer anything of value right away. You'd be amazed how not incompetent, but incomplete the expertise and talent can be in a startup, right? You got people like they've hired a bunch of people. The vetting process isn't very thorough. I've heard multiple stories of dudes from my community that got out, you know, even after like 6 years or something in the military, and went into a startup or even an established company, and you know, they were kind of getting their feet wet. They didn't feel like they knew anything, and then a crisis came along, and everyone started to completely shit the bed. Like, there was a dude that I was in buds with him. He did 6 years and got out, and he went to work for a company that did like helicopter stuff, right? Like helicopter tours, helicopter contract stuff. Just all, you know, if you want to be fly from A to B on a helicopter, they would hook you up, right? That was so just global helicopter operations all over the. And the owner of the company, the guy that started it, the kind of driving force behind it, died, surprisingly enough, in a helicopter accident. And the company was just like completely incapable of like moving forward and how do we do stuff. And like we've got all these contracts and stuff we got to deliver, and I think we're gonna have to call all of our customers and tell them we're not gonna be able to do the service. And he's just like, everyone fucking stop. Like, just because Frank died doesn't mean we have to give up on the business, right? We've got $10 million in contracts that we have to deliver on, and we're not just going to say we can't do that because Frank's not there, right? Like, literally, this is a 26-year-old or 24-year-old. He joined when he was 18, got out at 24. Only ever done one job, and that was the Navy, Navy SEAL teams. And so he was able to kind of convince enough of the stakeholders to not bail and just quit, like, because the owner died. And they were able to, I think they were able to meet most of those contracts, and everyone kept their job. And like, it was just an insane, for him, it was like, what do you mean you're just gonna quit? like, so I think everybody's got something like that they can offer. Might not be that dire, hopefully, but we have something that the most civilians don't. And you guys have to believe in that, and believe that it's a valuable thing to be a part of the team with that mentality. So enough pep talk, but I mean, you guys are all rock stars. So did we lose John? No, he just stepped away. So I know, Steven, you said you've got an interview coming up this week. Does anybody else have interviews scheduled or have already done interviews? No, Colton.
I've done one, but nothing coming.
Brandon's done one.
Yeah,
Troy?
I've done a couple.
Okay. So does anyone have any questions about interviews? Does anyone want to do some like practice? Or I think we should probably talk a little bit about them before we start doing dry runs. But I'd say clearly that John is going to be more of the expert on hiring and interviewing salespeople than I am. My interview to date is 0. I've done 0 interviews for salespeople. John, how many people have you interviewed for sales jobs?
Let's say more than 0.
0. Let's say 0 plus,
Plus 500 probably.
500, yeah. And that includes interviewing, hiring, managing, firing, right? Kind of the full life cycle. So
I fired all of them.
All been fired, right? Everything.
Yes.
So what?
Fired and fired.
So I guess we're an open Q&A right now. We're not doing runs, but what questions do you guys have about interviewing, whether it's the process or how you should answer, how you should dress?
Yeah. I have a question just off the top of my head. I'll write some down here too, because there have been a couple questions that I've been asked that I'm like, I have literally no idea how to answer this correctly. But probably the first one, and just the most general one, is if an interviewer is just simply like, tell me about yourself. Like what exactly is there a right answer? It pretty much is the question to that.
Yes. Oh yeah. Anyone want to help with that one? Steven?
Yeah, I think we've sort of covered it, or if we haven't covered it, we've absolutely dealt with it. Is there's a elevator pitch of maybe 3 to 5 bullets that they're looking for, and that really is it's not like, oh yeah, I like fly fishing and rock climbing or whatever, but it's more of like, why should I continue asking you questions and listen to you? Or, it's kind of that opener.
I'm the sales manager, and I want to hear, first of all, I want you to be yourself. Okay? Like all of you have different personalities, which is completely fine. As long as you're yourself, that's good. If you try to be somebody else, that's a no-go. It's like the interview is basically over. We may still be talking, but it's over. Okay, if you're pretending. So be yourself. And you need to have, that's such an obvious question they're going to ask you. You need to have that written down and memorized. You need to practice it, practice it 50 times. And it needs to sound something like, let's see what you would say. Okay, if someone asked me that, I haven't written mine down lately, but I would say, I've got 30 years experience working with sales teams in the technology industry. Most people say that I've got my own style for making a number, and that I generally focus on execution over strategy. I'm not sure if that matches up with what you guys are looking for or not. And so it's just 3 things: description of me, third-party reference, okay, about me, and then a reverse question. And so all of you should have that written down. And it should be like bam, 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 done. Because the other mistake you can make is if you start yapping. If you start talking, if it takes more than about 20 seconds, me, the sales manager, is thinking, this guy does not know when to stop talking. Therefore, I don't want this guy working for me. Again, interview's over. Okay, you might be telling a wonderful story, beautiful story, but I don't care. I want it to be quick and get out. Give it back to me. Give me the ball back. Does that help you, Troy?
It does. It definitely does. So you don't want someone, talking about, their favorite color, favorite sports team, favorite. Okay, it's just.
I like to start my day with a warm cup of chamomile tea.
Yeah.
And I like to read the newspaper.
Hey,
yeah. So
Jack,
what I wrote down was experience, work style.
I like a milk bath to start.
Too much information.
Doesn't everyone start their day with a milk bath?
Nice glass of warm milk. No.
So yeah, Troy, think about it. Remember, when someone asks you that question, the human being in us thinks about answering the question. I've got a brother and I've got a sister, and I grew up here and I traveled here. And my favorite dog's name is Poppy. I mean, that's kind of an answer to the question, but you really need to answer in your benefit, which is quick. And what can I say that will make that person start to think I might be able to help them? They're not, it's not a popularity contest. They're picking people who can help them make a number. They have to decide. So could you have one yet, Troy?
Do I have an answer to that question?
Yeah, I mean, okay, I'll give you one. I spent 10 years at the so-and-so unit helping people in the field make life and death decisions on what to do with the capture with our captured prisoners. People, my officers often said, that I was good at keeping calm under pressure and making decisions with a little bit of information. I don't know if that'll help or not in this job. What do you think? I mean, that's not exactly right, but I mean, that's the structure we're looking for.
Okay, I'll write something out and then I'll get back to you here. But I have experience, work style, and reverse question are like the 2 big things.
And the work style, the second part needs to be a third party, like my managers or my colleagues or my customers, they say this about me.
What's in it for the employer? Yeah. They don't, I mean, you could be a nice guy. You could enjoy walks on the beach. You could be a phenomenal abstract artist, like all these cool things that are like interesting and relevant. Generally just don't matter to a sales manager, hiring manager. They need to know, they might have 10 more interviews that day. and you can easily disqualify yourself by talking too much about yourself. Another thing, just I thought about it when that last Q&A was back and forth. If you're talking about third-party reference, try and use, and like I was looking at Brandon's LinkedIn earlier, and he's got a good kind of balance of like regular person phraseology, right? Like, you know, I'm an office management versus like my platoon leader or something like that, right? When I first started interviewing, getting out, my language is full of stuff like, you know, target, execute, fucking like, like these words that were really kind of scary. And I did it with someone, and they're like, I'm going to give you some feedback. You're terrifying. Your language makes you sound like you're a fucking Terminator. Like, we don't want a Terminator in our organization, even if you're really good at sales or whatever it is that we're doing. So like, learning to kind of soften some of that language and take out some of the military vernacular that we've all kind of had, you know, dumped into our brain. It's an active challenge because your brain has all these cues and you're going to want to spit back out jargon. And the sooner you can kind of ditch that and you know, smooth over some of that language stuff, the better.
I was going to ask, so what are your guys' points on as far as for help breaking that chain? Because like, for instance, for myself, I still had that that military respect as far as for seniors, right? Like I can't, like for the life of me, it's hard to break that military, you know. I know a lot of people like to still the yes sir, you know, no sir, that kind of direct answer, but like it's hard for me to break, like I said, those military, you know, acronyms. It's just gonna, for some reason, it just flows out of you, right? And it's just hard to kind of break those chains. Like, what are your guys' exercises for besides practice it? Like, I know I'll try to practice it.
Yeah, practice is, I mean, obviously practice and reps helps. Time away from the military obviously will help. But what I had to do, and this goes for getting into the military as well. I found when I got in, my, you know, Southern upbringing, I was calling everybody ma'am and sir, and like in the military, I was talking to primarily enlisted people. Very rarely in early onboarding stuff where you're talking to officers. So like, you don't want to call a chief sir or ma'am, right? You get fucking, you know, smacked for that. So like, you know, like say, hey, I work for a living. You call me sir. Like, oh, weird. I'm used to telling people in positions of respect and authority, sir or ma'am. So sorry, I just didn't, you know, like, well, so if I can say you're sorry, just fix it. Like, okay. So what I have to do, and this is something we talked about in general when we're talking either on a call or on a Zoom chat or whatever, or in person, the push to talk versus not push to think. Have what you're going to say in your head before you start talking, because if you're just kind of vomiting words out, chances are that you're going to vomit out some of those military, you know, phrases and words that you have in there. If you think about it, you rehearse it a little bit and you kind of have a little bit of a pause before you start talking, you're more likely going to kind of scrub that stuff out consciously because you've given yourself a chance to consciously think about what you're going to say.
Yeah,
that makes sense?
Also, Joseph, I can tell you from all my interviewing, 9 times out of 10, if somebody showed up with a clipboard and they had their notes with them and they said, I hope you don't mind, I brought some notes. I want to make sure I don't, I have some questions, you know, something like that. 9 times out of 10, that's a hire. That's a hire because they've done a little bit of homework and a little bit of thinking about this. They got some questions. They're taking it seriously. What most people do, because they don't know any better, is they just say, well, I've got this interview with Amazon 2 o'clock this afternoon, and I'm just going to show up and see what happens.
Yeah.
They're going to ask me a question. I'll see if I can answer it. Versus like really researching it, practicing, getting ready. Who am I talking to? What are they like? You know, all that kind of stuff. So my point is that 30-second commercial, Troy, you can have it written down on your clipboard. You can say, oh, well, I want to make sure I get this one right. I'm working my whole life to say this.
You got to imagine too, from their perspective, they probably got 100 resumes to go through in like a day or two, right? So they got a stack of resumes to start, and that's the top of their funnel. And they're going to go through, and the thing that's probably going to get you a second look or an interview even is the fact that you're a veteran, right? You're going to have this veteran. They're going to be like, hey, that's awesome. We're going to, you know, typically veterans are good raw material. So sure, we'll get this person an interview, even though you don't have any sales experience on your resume. So Colton just asked a question, you know, well, before I get to that, so resume gets you the interview, and then if there's 100 interviews for that person coming up, like you gotta imagine 90% of them are gonna suck, right? Person was underdressed or overdressed, or wasn't prepared, or showed up late, or talked too much, or they're gonna disqualify themselves. And so you're just trying to not get disqualified, right? You're not trying to blow them out of the water with how good you are. You're just trying to not do any of those things that are easy no's, right? Like showing up looking disheveled, or not having any notes or preparation, or being late, or when they ask you a question open-ended like that, taking the bait and running for 5 minutes with your condensed life story, right? So all those things are they're just looking for a way to no. But if you just kind of, well, he answered well, he was on time, he had notes. We're actually okay that he doesn't have any sales experience.
I'll tell you one more thing. I had a person show up one time a couple years ago, and for an interview, and he was a little bit nervous, really excited, and interview didn't go great. He talked too much and blah 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 blah. He really thought he was going to get the job, but I was just like, sorry, it's just not going to work. And he goes, but you don't understand. He goes, I had a ponytail that I've been growing for like 5 years, and I cut the ponytail off for this interview. And I said, well, man, I said, you should have checked with me. I said, I like ponytails. I mean, don't bother me a bit. I've got a ponytail. I mean, come on, what's wrong with you? So, you need to check your people out first before you go assuming things about them.
So Colton asked the question, how do you handle, and the first question that I had on my list of interview questions was, tell me about your experience in sales, right? So how does someone that's never sold anything before, coming fresh out of the military, handle that question?
Well, you're asking me for an idea?
Yeah.
Okay. I think we need to get our story straight here, but it's something like, in the military world, there is no job title of sales. So it's a little more difficult than civilian work, but I can tell you in the military world, you got to be selling all the time, because you've got to get your sergeant to agree to let you put your men on leave, or you've got to agree to get the quartermaster to get a special meal for your people, or you've got to get someone to agree to give you the new rifles for your sharpshooters. You think everything would just be a rule, like you get this and you get that based on the rules, but it's all this negotiation and selling. I'll do this if you do that. This is why we need it, and it's going to make the world a safer place. And so again, I'm rambling right now, but you need to have an answer to that says, we sell all the time in the military. There's just no job title for it. Here's some examples. And, do you think that would carry up, put it back on them at the end? Do you think that would carry over to what y'all do here?
Yeah. To add to that, my answer when I answered this question in an interview was probably not great. It was scary. I talked about dropping bombs on stuff and how that requires a lot of trust. If you can trust me to drop a bomb, you can trust me to make a sale. Like, it was not good. I think anytime you start talking about blowing stuff up, you've lost the plot. But the trust thing, I do think is a potential piece of that answer, Colton, because sales is about trust, right? No one's going to buy something from someone they don't trust. And so you maybe talk about times in the military where you were put in a position of trust, and maybe why you were there. My unit commander trusted me with a really important project. Here's what I did to build trust with that commander, right? I earned his trust by doing this, because the reality is you guys have never sold anything, right? You've never closed a deal that I'm aware of. So, but you can also, the second part of what I was going to say is this program that you're doing with us in Seven Eagle is intended to be the military resume plus sales internship, right? You've had a sales internship. We're not putting you guys on the front lines and asking you to go sell stuff. We are putting you in that headspace of, if I was in a sales position right now, how would I do it, right? What would prospecting look like? How would I find opportunity for my company? So, and then once you do it, how do you approach? How do you set a meeting? How do you structure a meeting and run it and move the ball down the field to actually get a close. So you've got more sales experience than you probably give yourself credit for, even if you never actually held a sales job. And like Dad said, the military requires a lot of the attributes for good salespeople, just for other capacities. So you need to be able to kind of map what those are, trust, reliability, tenacity, thick skin, not going to give up. Those are things that we've all got. And they're all transferable. You just haven't used them in a direct sales capacity in the past. So you can tell stories about, like, here's the things. Hey, listen, I'd be lying if I told you I've ever sold something in a capacity like you're asking about. But as I understand it from my sales internship, these are the things that you look for in a good good salesperson. And here's how I've demonstrated those attributes in the past, right? Bing, bang, boom. And then a reversal, maybe at the end, to ask them about, have you ever hired someone with no sales experience and had it work out? Something like that. So Colton also asked, having to sell yourself to get promoted and have people. Yeah, exactly. I mean, just the ways that you build trust within an organization like your military unit. You do what you say you're going to do. You show up on time, right? You have a no quit attitude. Those are things that salespeople are going to be challenged with, right? If you show up late, if you give up or easily, like, you're not going to be a good salesperson. So talk about those intangibles, those attributes, and how they translate and how you've done them in the past. What else?
I've got another one.
What questions do you guys have?
If anyone
Yeah,
else
what's up?
doesn't. It was so obviously there's just a bunch of questions here. How should we balance answering an interview question authentically and answering it in the scope of whatever job that we're applying for, if that makes sense? So, like, rather than answering it, I mean, every answer would be truthful, but like, I found myself trying to tie my answer to the job a lot, like to like sales, why I would be good at sales,
Mhm.
regardless of what the question was.
I'm not entirely sure how to answer that, Troy. So you're saying, like, should you be like customizing or catering your answers to that individual company? Like if they
Yes,
sell,
or just the
tractor
role
supply
itself.
stuff, like,
Yeah,
or the role itself?
yeah, exactly. So, like, even if they were asking me simple questions, I was like, just in my head, kind of overthinking, like, okay, what would they want to hear, about like their company? Like, how can I tie my answer to how I can help them? Even if it was like just something simple. Or
Yeah,
should,
I mean,
it be that way?
I think
Yeah.
it's a part of it's acknowledgement of what you're trying to do, what you're doing right now, which is good. You always need to think in these situations, if you're getting interviewed by the press, or if you're getting interviewed by someone who might hire you, or a prospect who might be considering buying something from you. Remember, when they ask you a question, it's not like your friends asking you a question. If Jack asked me a question, we just talk to each other. We give them just whatever we're thinking. But if it was someone who might hire you, like if they said, John, where did you grow up as a young man? Where did you grow up as a kid? Where were you? I would say, I grew up in Hartsville, South Carolina, a tiny town, only 10,000 people there. But man, they made us tough. It was a mill town. And they made us tough playing basketball and football. And, that toughness is carried over. That's kind of one of the reasons I like sales. It's because I like being in kind of a tough, competitive environment. So that early experience, I think, helped me get into this field. So, I could have told you a story about chasing butterflies and running through the mud, or whatever, catching fireflies or something. But, I told the truth, but then I took a piece of it and I put it in perspective of sales. And so you should do that on just about everything they ask you. Be honest, but take the snippet that relates to the job. And if they say something like, gosh, Troy, everything I ask you, it seems like it relates back to the job, you can say, well, I am in sales. Right? I mean, aren't you?
Yeah, that's another thing is
Tell them it's not, we're not quilting here. It's not a book club.
humor does go a long way. If you can work in some humor, right? Obviously not, you're not telling dirty jokes. You're not making jokes at the interviewer's expense or a company's expense or anything. But like, if you can convey some humor, some levity, kind of show that you're have a little more depth to you than just, we're just going to spit back the answers you think we want to hear. Like, you're just spitting back answers. You're like ChatGPT, right? There, you're giving inputs. You're just kind of regurgitating the answer, and you're not really dynamic as a human being. But if you can, have a little banter, a little humor, a little joke in there.
So Jack,
Yep.
let's do it. Ask me some questions.
Okay.
And I'm gonna do it the wrong way.
Okay.
Ask me where I grew up.
Hey, John. Thanks for coming in for this interview this morning. Gonna get right to it. Tell me about where you grew up.
Hartsville.
Hartsville. Where's that? I'm not familiar.
It's in South Carolina.
Okay. Must be a pretty small town. I'm from a small town myself, so that's cool. Can you tell me about a challenging situation in the military, that you faced and how you navigated it?
Going through basic was challenging. I almost quit. It was so hard. I had some horrible chafing.
I've heard that. I've heard that can get gross. How did your military training and experience prepare you for a career in sales?
Well, unfortunately, we don't have a sales department. So I was just hoping maybe you could train me.
Okay. Yeah, I think you guys are pretty
So,
malleable.
You hear Jack said okay right there. You know what that okay means?
Mhm.
Parentheses. No, thank you.
Yeah. Alrighty then.
So,
Moving
I
on.
mean, they're not looking for the answer. The answer was Hartsville, South Carolina. That's not what they're looking for. They're looking for you to say something with enthusiasm that's a little salesy. I'm from a little town called Hartsville, South Carolina, and boy, the one thing they gave me there was toughness. There was a mill town, and we played some tough tackle football, and I think it helped me get in sales. It's one of the reasons I like it. There's all of a sudden the guy's thinking, yeah, come on. So, and it doesn't have to be too long, but does have to have a little, we all have different voices, but whatever your normal voice is, I say you go like a +1. So my normal voice is probably out of 10, maybe a 7. I'm not a particularly loud person normally, but if I was interviewing, it would be an 8. I take it up just 1. So just a little more enthusiastic than normal. You agree with that, Jacko?
I do. I'm like a 2. My normal
No,
voice
you're
is like,
not.
yeah, it is. I mean, I'm generally, especially like, I think some of my military training has something to do with that, right? On the radio, I had a monotone, even delivery on purpose, right? You don't want to be too emotional or too hyped up or anything like that. So I would slow down, take a breath, and not get too excited. So I've had to actually amp up my speech a little bit when I talk to people, sound a little more interested. It sounds almost kind of faint a little bit, right? Don't sound like a robot. 2 questions that have come up that we haven't touched yet. So Colton asked, when researching companies for an interview, is it good practice to come with a short prospect list or more? How you would go about looking for the specific company? I'd say no. If you do a prospect list for them, that's free work, right? They can just say, no, thanks for the list, next. It shows you, tenacity, and you're doing like, you're working like extra credit almost like that. But like, you could talk about how you would look, or you could ask them, like, hey, I've got some ideas about who a good prospect for your company would be, but maybe you could tell me, like, how do you guys prospect and what do you look for? I've got some, some contacts in mind that I'm thinking about. I wouldn't give it up that easily. Here's a list of 10 companies that I did research for you. Like, thanks. I'll go call all these when you leave my office today, and not hire you. You've already done this work for me. I have to pay you. It's great. You think anything different there, Dad? Is that
on the prospects?
Would you bring a list of prospects to the interview for that company? So if you know someone's interviewing at Foxfire, would you
You know, I think
want, like, hey, here's 10?
I think in general, if it really makes sense, like if it's like I wouldn't bring a lot, because it almost, I think if it was me, I would think, well, what do you think? You think we hadn't thought of that?
Yeah,
You know, here you are in an interview, you think I hadn't thought of that. But if you had one, you said, you know, my uncle runs the so-and-so plant over in Spartanburg. Curious, do you guys work with him? You know, so that's, I think if it really makes sense, that's fine. The other thing I like to do is to talk to a user or two of the product. So go over, you can find somebody that uses their product somewhere, find them online, you know, whatever, hopefully somewhere where you can go meet them and say, hey, I just got out of the Army. I'm trying to get a job with XYZ company. I want to see how you guys use the product, see what I can learn before I go in the interview. And then when you go in there, when it's your time to ask questions, you can say, you know, I figured I would learn all I could about you before I came, and I went and found a user and found out this and that, and they love the new product, or they hate the new product, or, you know, whatever it is.
yeah. And you can just go to like Yelp or the company's testimonial page or Glassdoor. You can go to a lot of different these open source places and find either former employees or current and former customers. Go to Twitter, go to the company's page on Twitter and see what people are saying, and just kind of get a sense of what customers have to say about it, good, bad, or indifferent. And then you can come in equipped like, hey, I did some customer research, and based on what your customers are saying, you know, this is like a really big selling point. Does that line up with what you guys are doing? Or, you know, just, it shows that you've done some research and you know where to look, and you kind of thought through this stuff, and you're not just flying blind. But yeah, I wouldn't go to the trouble of creating a prospect list for them. And then your other question, Colton, was what if they ask you to cold call or write an email in the interview, even though they know we're mostly entry level? I mean, entry level, you're going to cold call an email, so that's not out of scope for any sales job. And then I don't know, do you, Andre, is there any, like, will people ask you to make a cold call in an interview?
Some will. So,
Some will.
some are doing more of that kind of thing now. It's more in development than sales, where they're saying, you know, okay, we want you to use this computer and write a Python thing that makes you do so and so. You know, I mean, that's happening more and more. So if there's any question that you're at all concerned about, you can write down the question and the answer on your clipboard. Because, you know, it's very easy to design, you know, a couple of good outbound cold emails, and also a couple of cold calls. So, you know, I think it's just much better if you're all concerned about it, write it down, put it on the clipboard, and you'll have it there. And they probably won't ask you to do it, but it'll just make you feel better that you've got it covered.
Yeah, and this is an area where I would use ChatGPT. So say, ChatGPT, write me a a cold prospecting email for, say you want to go work for Toyo Tires. Okay, I'm as if I'm a Toyo Tire sales rep, marketing to whoever, and it's going to write you an email template that says exactly that, and you can tweak it and put it in your own language. You can ask ChatGPT to write it again, but shorter and funnier. However you want to kind of tweak it and massage it, that could work. And then same thing about cold calling, right? We've done the cold call method. They really just want to see how you handle yourself in the first 30 seconds, probably, how you handle any kind of objection, what your demeanor is on the call, and if you have if you can think quickly, right? So if they say, hey, I've got 30 seconds, but I'm interested, give me your pitch. You got to be ready and have that ready. And that's where we practice this stuff offline like this. So yeah, absolutely. Even if it's like make a cold call to me sitting here, right? You're not actually picking up a phone and dialing, but pretend that I'm your prospect. You're day one. I just gave you the call list and I'm the first one on the list. Give me a call. Ring, ring, and that's a question too. You can ask. If they don't ask about that, you could say, hey, does your sales team do rehearsals? Do you guys practice this stuff with each other when you're not talking to customers or prospects? aspects. Because that's something we've done in our sales internship with a lot of practice and rehearsals. It's also something we did a lot in the military, right? Practice makes us good. That's why we're the best military in the world. You know, do you guys do anything like that? That way you're bringing some of your experience to their organization, and maybe they are, maybe they aren't, but shows that you're thinking about it. Let's see. So for tomorrow, I think we double down on interview stuff. We start doing practice interviews. You guys, your homework is to bring some companies that you'd like to interview with. It can be just the name of the company, and we will pretend to be those companies to interview you. That way it's a little more context driven and not just interview in a vacuum. So if you've got a company, your dream job, right? Go to work for Google or something like that. Sky's the limit. So let us know who you guys want to interview with, and we will ape those companies for practice interviews starting tomorrow. We've got a couple minutes left. So if anybody has questions, thoughts, concerns,
show the picture I sent you, Jack? I sent you a picture via email of the comics.
Oh, last week, yeah, I showed it to him.
Of the comics?
You and your comics in that like dive shop or whatever.
Okay. All right.
I told him where you were. Up to speed.
All right.
No, I had a job interview getting out. So 2017 probably. Big startup in San Francisco. It was for an account management role, and they had me whiteboard it. They gave me an account management problem and said, like, okay, you got a customer, is a freight forwarding company. So you've got a customer with freight in China. They're trying to get it into the port of, Charleston by this date, and it's on a ship right now, and it's having to reroute because of a big storm. Like, what do you do? I'm just like, and they were definitely putting me in a weird spot to see how I handled it. And I don't think I handled it very well. I hadn't thought about it. I hadn't practiced it. I was trying to give the right answer, and I didn't have any of the information that I needed to give the right answer. And so I was just kind of flailing. I was just like, well, I would ask this question. Like, okay, now here's the answer. Now what? Ask this question. It was just like, so really, doing these rehearsals, doing some practice, just even like once or twice, spending a couple of days on it, gives you that little bit of confidence, a little bit of, hey, I've done this before. It's not my first time being interviewed. Help push some of those butterflies back a little bit. And the reality is, like, if you're nervous about an interview, you're probably gonna be nervous about making sales calls. Anything you can do to alleviate that anxiety and just say, hey, listen, no one's shooting at me. I'm dry and warm, and life is good. So anything above that standard, and I'm happy.
Yeah,
right.
And I would try to remember that, heck, it might not be the right fit. That this might not work out. Probably most won't work out. If they want someone who can really do all this stuff, maybe I'm not a good fit for that right now. And that's okay. And I'll tell you this also is, I used to ask people, I would say, all right, so I need you to, whiteboard or put on a legal pad, tell me how many gas stations do you think roughly there are in North America. And, all I wanted them to do was just pull that piece of paper out and start doing some math. Like, well, let's see, my town's probably got 100 gas stations. There's 3 towns like my town in my state. That's 300. There's 50 states, 50 times 300, and just somehow come up with a number. And some people wouldn't do it, they were just like, this is, I can't do it. And so just do your best. Sometimes they want people just to try and maybe even get halfway through the puzzle, and if you screw up, kind of laugh about it. It's no big deal.
Another thing, this is just, I'm thinking about interviews now and what they might try and do to vet you and see how you handle it. I had like 3 interviews over the course of 2 days, multiple phone interviews, then a couple of in-person interviews. And the last one was with like the 5th employee of this company. This is a $1 billion company at that point. So she'd been there for a long time. And I'm convinced at this point that her only role was to see how I handled in a really uncomfortable social situation or human interaction situation, because she stared at me unblinking the entire time, did not break eye contact the entire interview. She would ask a simple question and then just stare at me. And I felt real uncomfortable, right? Because it was kind of asocial. Like that's something that like a psychopath does. So it was very much put me on my heels. Like, what the fuck is this woman's problem? Like, is she trying to flex on me? We're about to fight. Like, I really didn't know what to do with it. And so I kind of just squirmed in my chair while she was asking me these questions. And in retrospect, I was like, that's really smart, right? Put a woman in a position of authority, asking really simple questions and just making you feel uncomfortable. Like it completely rattled me, and I was surprised. So they might do stuff like that where they have someone who's like the bad cop and they are seemingly impossible to please, just to give you that, the angry customer experience. Or I don't know, Dad, what do you think about, what are the red flags to look for when you're interviewing? It's like a runaway, right? Even if they offer you a job, just decline as fast as you can. Like, I think about if they're really eager to hire you and they don't ask a lot of questions, get the fuck out of there. Like, that's probably, I had someone tried to hire me to sell Cutco knives when I was just out of high school. And I was clearly like, I didn't know shit, but I knew that was not a good place to be. So what else? What other red flags?
Red flags for them when they're interviewing with people?
Yeah, if you're being interviewed and the person or the company's giving you signals that you kind of take as like, hey, this is strange. Like, what can we tell these guys to watch out for?
If the person you're interviewing with just seems to be a jerk, let's say they're taking phone calls while they're talking to you, or they just keep talking to other people, or they're obnoxious or telling dirty jokes or anything that makes you think they're not professional, guess what? They're not professional, and you don't want to work there. They're not going to change. In fact, what you're seeing today is the best version of them because they're interviewing you. So if somebody's not professional during the interview, Jack's right. You need to just, don't talk so much, don't answer so much, get out of there. And if they offer you a job, don't take it, because you don't want to go work for a bad company or a bad person. And most companies aren't bad, but the ones that are, they're bad through and through. Because, if the leader's bad, he's going to hire bad managers, they're going to hire bad people, and it's just, so.
Yeah, you could ask about the last, what happened to the last guy you hired for this job?
Yeah.
How long ago was that? 3 months ago?
Yeah.
What happened? Bad fit? So yeah, it's equal business stature. You guys are vetting this company just as much as they're vetting you. So it can be hard to see kind of coming out. You want a job, you're eager to get a job, you're thinking, maybe there's no one out there for me. It's like dating. If you are dating someone and all your friends tell you run away, and you're like, but there might not be someone else for me. Like, there's someone else for you, right? You don't want to commit to this person long term, given the red flags that they're giving off, right? If they steal your phone and occasionally just don't let you have access to your phone, it's a red flag. Get out of there, right? If they give you ultimatums, you should probably run away. But like, to just enter
with a knife.
If she cuts you, yeah,
that's a red flag.
Pin in your ear while you're asleep.
If they hold on to your
But anyway, we digress. Yes, if they control your travel and limit your ability to move freely, absolutely, you should walk, don't run, or run, don't walk. Brandon, I don't know if you can hear me or not. Shoot me your phone number, and I will get you set up for Intelisys portal access so you can play around with those tools.
Awesome, Jack. Yeah, I can hear you. You bet. I'll do that right now. All
right. Thanks, dude. And so Brenna, tomorrow we'll do some mock interviews with this group, and that's all we got. They're back over to you.
Awesome. We'll see you guys tomorrow.
Muchas gracias. Talk to you later.